Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon. My name is Brad Brassi. I am a certified residential real estate appraiser. I'm based out of Temecula. I'd like to get a round of applause for Robert for coming over here and opening up the training room and getting it cooled down into semi-normalcy and to get everything up and running for me. I appreciate him taking a couple minutes out of his day to get over here and meet me. As Vicky mentioned, if you got any questions, go ahead and put him into the screen. And this is kind of a quick background on who I am. I've been appraising since 1992. I am based out of Temecula. I cover Southwest Riverside County. I've completed probably between 4,700 appraisals, a lot of custom homes, a lot of land. Let me minimize this over here so I can see what's going on. And let me back up. And I do a fair amount of land, a lot of custom homes. I do manufactured homes on acreage, equestrian properties, that type of thing. I am a member of the VA panel. I am certified under FHA, but full disclosure, I have not done any of that work in about 5 years, but I do stay up to speed on that. I've also done relocation work. A fair amount of my work right now is litigation work. I do estate, bankruptcy, family law work. I'm working on the wildfires up in Woolsey and the Woolsey and Thomas fire. And I'll be heading out from here to go up there this afternoon. Yes, folks, I do ride horses. I do chase cows. You'll hear a twang accent from time to time. If something I says make absolutely no sense, please put that in there and stop me, raise your hand, do something. Because I do have slang that drives people crazy. Once upon a time, I did sit on your side of the fence. I was the senior VP of marketing and sales back in the 80s and 90s. I do understand what you guys are up against, although I will tip my hat to y'all, because if I was a real estate agent, I'd probably be in jail for murder because I would have killed a buyer or a seller for not liking a room that was painted blue. What we're going to go through today, and by the way, just as a reminder, this is going to be recorded. There will be a link available for you. And then later on, when we get down through a fair amount of this presentation, there's going to be some commentary about rebuttals. And I've got a Word doc that I have sent to Vicky, and Vicky will disseminate that to those of you that are interested. It's a Word document. It's a template. And we'll go over some things to do on the rebuttal side of things and how to handle some of the issues that come up. Some of the summary, we're going to be kind of all over the place a little bit, but think outside the box. I know this is COVID. I know everything is going crazy, but if y'all are still doing a lot of your work that way you were doing it pre-COVID, you might be shortchanging yourself. And I'm sure most of you have made that big leap and jump, but just kind of throwing some things out to you. I'm not going to be able to resolve all your appraisal issues here today, but I'm sure going to be able to talk about some of them. Thank you, Robert. I'll talk about them and see if we can come to some resolutions. If we can't, or we need to carry this conversation on later, you have my phone number. It's my mobile number. It's in the chat box. I open myself up to any real estate agent that needs to ask a question of an appraiser, and I will give them my opinion, my take on things, and how you might want to look at some things on a potential listing or something that you may be getting involved with for one of your clients. One of the other things I want to stress early on is make sure you're posting a lot of photos. And I'm going to throw one thing out right now. I just did a quick look at it last night. 45 to 50% of the active listings in Temecula have virtual videos. That means 50 to 55% don't. Just saying, folks, you might want to think about that. If you've got Dropbox or Google Drive, some other cloud-based, make sure you get all your videos and up and going, just in case anybody calls you for them and has them available for them. I think it'll help you out a lot. We're going to talk a little bit about how to meet the appraiser. We're also going to go through some charts on COVID-19 pricing, and I'll show you a few things going on with my world famous Infosparks that you guys have access to. And just remind yourself and your staff, you gotta watch the market every day now. And I know the sellers are your clients, and I know things can happen. Just try not to let them convince you to get into a bad decision, because it's just not gonna work. Real quick, let's jump into Fannie Mae. Fannie Mae is most of the orders that you're probably seeing coming through where the appraisers are showing up are doing interiors. But be aware that if there is an issue with a property owner that doesn't want somebody in, or an appraiser that gets an assignment that doesn't want to go inside, they can do exterior appraisals or a desktop. And if they do that, it's going to take a whole bunch more information on the part of the appraiser to get information, and they're going to be bugging you on the phone about it. Most of the lenders that I've run into are scared to death over buybacks. So they are asking for interiors, but periodically you may run into something where you do have an exterior. They are legitimate, they are acceptable. That went into effect back on March 23rd, and it will continue to be ongoing. Now, the other little tidbit that just occurred is that Fannie just threw an extra 0.5% charge, 0.05% charge, that's a typo, into their cost. So all of a sudden, costs are jumping up on loans that are going on right now. So you got to be careful with that. I just had a conversation this morning with a real estate agent telling me that they had a property, track house, not high priced at all. They had it listed, and I'm just going to throw out just exhibit numbers just for examples. They had it listed at 200,000, and they got multiple offers, and they came in at 220,000 for the final offer. And a second appraisal was requested by the lender, and they didn't know what was going on. And what I indicated to them is that this is probably the world of lenders and the secondary market getting terrified over what is going on right now. For those of you that may have not been in the business for a long period of time, 2005 and 2006, this has the remnants of it. We're getting multiple offers, prices are jumping around, things are getting crazy. You're gonna have to be careful with that. So these packages of how to meet the appraiser we're gonna talk about in a minute, those are gonna be important pieces of information for you. The other thing I'm gonna stress on a bunch of different these slides is y'all gotta have your lender be your new best friend. And if you don't have a lender that's your best friend, you better go out and get one, because you need to keep tabs on what's going on, because it is literally changing hourly. And if you don't believe me, ask the lenders last week when they get hit up the side of the head when Fannie Mae unannounced decided to add that extra cost to the loan packages. FHA, there have been rumors and innuendos that they're getting stricter on their loan requirements. I don't have anything to validate that except some conversations with a couple of different people I know in the industry. So they have been looking at things a little bit more stringent. They are still allowing emails for VOE, last I heard. And effective immediately, which was back in March, when I first started up on these slides, through the end of this month, they're going to extend everything that they've been doing, and more than likely, it's probably going to go out, I'm going to guess, out towards at least November and maybe out to the end of the year. FHA is also allowing desktops and exterior site visits. Not happening very much because of the things that FHA wants, but they do allow it. And if you're representing a buyer on an FHA deal, make sure you check with that lender and get in bed with them and understand what's going on with your client and what's happening, and make sure you understand and follow what's going on with the market with that lender, because something can change instantaneously, and all of a sudden that buyer is no longer qualified, and you didn't even know what happened. So stick with your lenders as much as you can. On the VA side of things, they've also moved to exterior appraisals. They will allow walkthroughs, but they're trying to protect some of the older veterans that are out there, and also some of the older appraisers that are out there, myself being included, since I am qualified as being long past 65 now. The VA does ask us to show up at the property, and if we're going to do exterior onlys, they do want us to measure the exterior of the home. If it is a 2-story home, they want us to measure the footprint of the first floor in order to verify what is going on and to make sure that everything is going in accordance to the way it should be going. And so kind of confirm what public records is. If there's a large discrepancy, then they are going to be asking some questions, and everybody's going to need to kind of do some additional follow-up work. They're also asking the appraisers to shoot any front photos, side and rear photos. They will cite any exterior minimum property requirement items. If there is something that's been disclosed in an MLS listing, they're going to ask about it if there is something going on the inside. then they're gonna want to know some additional information about that. There may be some in-kind accounts that can be set up if they have to do some work after close of escrow, depending upon what your seller's situation is. Let's talk a minute about Tidewater, which is, excuse me, which is gives you the opportunity for a reconsideration of value. The Tidewater program, unbeknownst to a lot of people, is supposed to happen on the front end, not on the back end. And if the VA appraiser runs into an issue with the contract price versus their valuation, they're supposed to notify the lender. Now, I know sometimes that's not happening. And part of it is because there's a new crop of VA appraisers that have come in the last 2.5, 3 years. About 4 or 5 years ago, when there was a refi boom like there is now, the VA got beat up by Congress because they said there was an appraiser shortage and they needed to do something about it. So the VA went out and brought a bunch of new people in, and a lot of them are not completely up to speed with what's going on with VA policy. But Tidewater is a program that allows for reconsideration of value, gives everybody an opportunity to understand what's going on. And that's why you want to make sure you have your market data and your general commentary ready in case something does happen after the appraiser is left. And you're going to notice down here, I said it again, all parties, make your lender your new best friend.
Brad, I have when you were talking about Tidewater, I wanted to just say too, that there have been quite a few in our office that have popped up probably in the last 3 months. And I don't think we were successful, but in one case too, because we didn't have the stats to give to the appraiser, and it was after the original appraiser had been out.
Okay, and we'll cover on we're going to touch base on a couple of things on how to present and what to present to the appraiser when you show up. And I don't care if they're conventional or FHA or VA, doesn't matter to me. I'm going to give you some ways and some thoughts and some things to think about on how to present your data, and also how to hang on to that data in case you get a grumpy old appraiser that wears a cowboy hat, says he's not interested in it. And if that happens, I think we've got some measures by which you can help yourself help your client.
Brad?
Yes.
You said that to me once on an appraisal I met you at, exactly that, but thank goodness you brought it in.
First off, who is this? Because I'm not seeing your face right now.
It's Janie Christofi.
Oh, hey, Janie, how are you? I'm sorry.
I'm good, thank you. Yes, you told me those exact same things. I was scared to death, but you brought it in.
Well,
you tricked me.
I got lucky once. Huh? Okay, that's a good thing.
And Janie, I see your questions. I'll do that. I'll ask him at the end. Okay.
All righty. With regards to what the listing agents should be looking at and some things to be considering, get lots of photos. I still to this day am seeing MLS listings that have less than 5 photos in it. And I don't understand. It just doesn't make sense. I don't think y'all are getting charged $50 a photo to go into MLS. So you might want to think about getting some more photos in there, because the more photos you have of the interior and the exterior, the less conversations you're going to have with appraisers on calling you and confirming sales and that kind of thing. Because if they can get more of it out of MLS, it's just going to free up your time. The appraisers should be calling you, and they may be calling the seller if they're doing an exterior only. And so get prepared for that. I would prefer that you handle any of that communication, but depending upon how the appraiser's conversation goes, you may need the seller involved if there's something going on. Maybe you get a conference call going on together with both of you being on the phone at the same time. The GSEs, government-sponsored entities, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, VA, they have granted leeways for using third-party photos. So if there's something going on inside the house and there's something that the property owner is really proud of and they want to shoot a photo of it that maybe is not an MLS, they can certainly do that. And so there's certainly no issue with that whatsoever. So they're giving us the opportunity to go do that now, and we can use them. Now, how long that's going to go for, I don't know, but for right now, that's the story. I will pass out this one little comment, which I know gets frustrating, but if you do have a good appraiser that is trying to work with you and communicate with you, be patient with them. I know there's some meatheads running around out there in my industry. I've been around them. I've taught classes with them in it. I've been in classes with them. I understand what you're up against. I wish I could wave a magic wand, but I can't. So you just got to be prepared for just about anything and everything. Get your information data sheets ready, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. That describes the property, and prep some of your market data sheets, and then send them along to the appraiser. If you're going to meet them at the property, bring them with you. And real quick, March 15th was kind of the day the world stood still, and that's when the Fed dropped their Fed funds rate. And the reason I bring this up is because there's a transition that was going on during May and June and July, because what was happening is there was not a lot of sales out there. And the March 3rd to March 15th line, if you will, was where a lot of appraisers were having trouble, because they knew if they went before that to pull data, they were going to have a hard time trying to convince anybody as to that really showing what's going on with the market. Now that we're into the month of August, we've got data going back. We should have a reasonable amount of data to start doing more analysis on COVID data. And hopefully that may take away some of the pain of what's going on. I understand the multiple offers that are going on, and we'll talk about that in a minute as well. Check out your listings, your pendings, cancel withdrawals. See what's going on with the volume on those. And I'm going to show you a couple of charts that are really easy to do. And if you're seeing any pendings that are coming up in a neighborhood where you're going to list a property, call that agent and find out what's going on, as much information as they'll share with you, because the more forearmed you are, the better off you're going to be, not only dealing with your seller, but also dealing with the appraiser when the time comes. I don't know when this is all going to end. I wish I had a magic, magic cube that would tell me when this is going to go. I don't know. We just got to be prepared for this to go for a while longer, and we just got to deal with what's happening in front of us. Also, I'm going to put a little note out here. I've heard some screaming and yelling by real estate agents because of lenders, and just to understand, the lenders are in a disaster, and they have been for about 6, 7, 8 months now. The drop in interest rates has increased refis. That's become a problem for them on volume side of things, but things are still changing. And I say hourly and daily, I'm not kidding. Things are changing so rapidly. Sometimes these lenders don't even know what's changed between the morning and the afternoon. So just keep in touch with them. Now we're gonna get into some charts. We're gonna kind of go through this quickly so I can spend some more time on the tail end of this thing, where I really want to make sure that we're at. And I'm kind of paused for a second because I realized I turned my phone off, and I need to get my timing up here so I know where I'm at. These charts are coming out of Infosparks. And if you're not familiar with Infosparks, it's on your desktop right before you click on the box to take you into the search window. And it's on the second row, far left-hand side, and it's an orange box. And it's very easy to use. And if a guy wearing a Stetson can figure it out, I'm sure y'all can do that. And it's very, very quick, and it's very, very easy. And it will show you some rather interesting little details. This is pending sales since 2008, Southwest Riverside County. You can see over here, we don't have as many pending sales, which kind of figures considering the volume is way down. Here's new listings the last 5 years. You can see what's going on there. Southwest Riverside County again. You can see the peaks back here in 2018, mid-18 and mid-19, and now look where we're at. Now we're starting to drop back off again on our listings. So just kind of general information. This again is all Infosparks. Here is can be very helpful, I believe, as well, especially if you're trying to figure out about what's going on with the market and price increases. And I know some of you guys have CMA type programs and things that do work for you. But this is July's average sales price on a year-over-year basis. So it's July 2018, July 2019, and July 2020. So it shows you what's happened in Southwest Riverside County over these last 3 years during the month of July. So you have a relative comparison here. And what really is nice is if you look down here, it actually tells you what the difference was between this year and last year. You don't even have to do the math, which I was kind of happy about. Here's the July average sales price in Temecula. Again, 2018, 2019, 2020. You can see a 6.1% level. And again, this is encompassing everything under 1 acre is what I took a look at. I tried to get away from the custom homes because they'll skew stuff up all over the place. And I know there's customs on 1 acres, but I tried to keep it reasonably simple if I could. For those of you that may be up a little bit further north, here's some actives in Corona. This gives you an idea of what's happened. I mean, we've had a 50% drop since 2018 and 2019 in active listings in Corona. Same thing in Lake Elsinore, a bigger drop in Lake Elsinore. I mean, we're down to 148 from 407 back 2 years ago. Wildemar, not as much drop, but still a little bit, about 10%. And then here's Canyon Lake's average pricing year over year. You can see there was a little bit of a drop last year, and then it's picked back up again this year. Some of that, there was some overlays and some hiccups still with that issue with the lease and the water district issue with the leasing, and there were some problems going on, if you recall, up in Canyon Lake. And some of that may have been directly involved with that. So now you've had a little bit of a price bump again in Canyon Lake again. Myriad actives, here's another 50% drop. And so this just kind of gives you an overview of what we're up against right now. You guys know better than I what the heck has been going on, but this is what you guys are up against. And this is what the appraisers are up against. And this is where the fistfights are coming in. And I have them regularly myself trying to figure out, how am I going to take a look at this? How am I going to make sense out of this? But the biggest part of this is that I am looking at this type of data. I'm looking to see what the year over year sales transition has been, and am I seeing increases in prices? And then I'm also trying to take a look more narrowly at the independent market, in the immediate market area in which I'm doing my appraisals in. I'm hoping my peers are doing the same thing. Some do, some don't. And that's where some of the fistfights come in. Let's kind of get into some of the nitty gritty here. Probably why you guys are a lot more interested in hearing me yak today than than other things. But please, before I forget, do not forget about Infosparks. It is a very, very powerful, very simple tool, and it can give you some good overviews. And it may very well be helpful when you have to go do a rebuttal. If a real estate appraiser is giving you a hard time and he's telling you that all sorts of bad things are happening and the world's coming to an end and you're in Temecula, and you put that chart into your rebuttal, what do you think is going to happen at the lender's end of things? So that's why I'm kind of trying to bring some of this in. I think some of this charting will help you get where you are trying to go within reason. You can't have a house listed at $499,000 and get an offer at $600,000 and expect a guy with a cowboy hat to come in and make a miracle. I'm not that good. But this type of information may very well be help, and a chart like this will be very helpful to the lender, and then now they can start asking questions and start realizing that there is really something going on. So let's go back here to get into this topic about the appraisers and how we do things, and then we're going to talk a few minutes about how to meet the appraiser. Typically, we go back 6 months, and on tract houses, we use about a half a mile radius, which means a 1 mile diameter. On custom homes, we can go 5 miles, we can go more, depending upon how big the custom home is, what the amenities are, where it's located at. And we can also go back longer in time. My favorite 2 words are "it depends," and it really does depend upon the subject property as to what you have to go do. Now, the COVID-19 in March, April, May, June, and July really screwed up going back 6 months, because the lenders were terrified over what was happening with the marketability of properties. And nobody wanted to listen, and nobody wanted to pay attention because everybody thought it was going to be doom and gloom. So now that we're out 6 months, we're now into the end of August, and we're out in, to get into November, into September, that will take us through getting into the early part of March. Now, most of our data should be COVID-19 impacted, if there is any impact, which we just saw there really isn't. But at least now they're going to be with all COVID-19 type data. So that should help some of the issue. Do not jump freeways. If you have got and I'm going to because I am south of Riverside County, I'm going to use some examples from here, but hopefully you guys will get the trend if you're coming, the ideas of what I'm talking about if you're out of Orange County or somewhere else. Don't jump freeways. If you've got a property that's located in West Murrieta, west of the I-15 freeway, do not be going over to the east side of the 15 freeway and pulling a data point, because all of a sudden you see a sale over there that really helps you think that you're making sense. Well, I can tell you right now, if it's a track house and you jump a major freeway and the underwriter sees it, they are going to have a coronary on it. And the appraiser's not going to be able to use it. The underwriter's going to have a heart attack and bad things are going to happen. So don't be jumping major roads. Don't be jumping freeways. My little note here says, don't let the seller talk you into a sales price that you know isn't going to work. I've really emphasized, especially now, I realize that sellers have got control of this market, and your job as a fiduciary is to represent them ethically and to do what they're to their direction. But try to make sure you can talk them off of the fence, because if these guys get crazy and you know there's no support for this, it's just going to end badly. The other item that I will throw out is in this multiple offer tailspin that we're in right now. Be careful about taking the highest offer. Sometimes that may not work for you, and you may be back in square one, and you may have to go back and redo this whole thing again and get another buyer. So I put a little note on here, said you think the charts above may be helpful. I think they will be helpful for your seller. I also think they will be helpful for your real estate appraiser. Now, we're going to talk here in just a second about what we need to do. Here we are. We got 4 asterisks with red stars right next to this. Meet the appraiser at your listing. Folks, I'm going to tell you a little horror story. This was pre-COVID. I had a real estate agent who I sent 4 emails, left 3 voicemails, and 3 text messages for over the course of 8 days, and she never responded. I won't go through all of the blood, sweat, and tears that occurred, but suffice it to say that it was almost day 11 before I finally got her response back. And that was because the broker manager got involved. The appraiser was so mad at me for calling her broker manager, she decided not to meet me at the property. I tried to call her back to give her a heads up, to give her some information about what I had seen at the property, and she chose not to return my call. Folks, you can run your business however you want to. But I know Tom, and I know Vicky, and I know Sonia, and I know some of the other people that have been around Coldwell Banker for a long time and how they train. And I know that's not their preference. So I'm going to put 4 big stars here and say, guys, meet your appraiser at the listing. I know you're all busy. I know there's COVID, there's a lot of craziness going on. You're dealing with kids, you're dealing with homeschool. There's a million things going on right now. But you really got to meet the appraiser at the property, because if you don't, you're not going to have a sense for where this appraiser is coming from and what you need to get prepared for. The next item, bullet point, talks about subject upgrades. It says what, when, and the dollar amounts. And then I got solar in there, and we'll talk about that in a second. What I would recommend is that you create multiple single sheets of paper. One of the sheets of paper, you can ask your seller to fill out for you if you like to have them involved in this whole process. Ask them to put any of the upgrades that they've done in the property. What were the upgrades? What year did they do them in? And how much did they spend on it? Now, I'm not interested in doorknobs, and I'm not interested in the fact that they had their windows washed, because that's really not an improvement, but you would be surprised what I see. On the what, did they redo the roof? Did they get new windows? Did they redo the HVAC? Did they redo the kitchen? And if they said they redid the kitchen, well, what did they do? Have they still got 1988 track house cabinets that they put granite counters on? Well, okay, they got granite counters, but the cabinets probably look a little worn. So use your judgment on that. You know, find out what the cost was on the countertops, or how much did they spend for their appliance packages? How much did they spend on the new HVAC system? That kind of thing. If they put new windows in, what did they do with that? How much did they spend? The key about the when part is that as a real estate appraisers, we are mandated under the changes in the law back in 2010 to indicate when any remodeling was done or reconditioning was done to the kitchen or the bathrooms. And we go from new, 0 to less than 1 year, 1 to 5, 6 to 10, and 11 to 15 years. So if you tell the appraiser that they put new windows in 2011, then the appraiser knows when that happened and they can report that in the report. Hopefully they will report it because it wasn't a kitchen or bathroom, but hopefully they will put that documentation in there because that will give some information. I don't care if they don't put it in the report, doesn't matter to me. The bottom line is that you're presenting this to them so that they have the documentation necessary for them to do their job, hopefully, and do it correctly, and that eventually when they get through with all of it, that their valuation matches up with the contract price. Now, the last little parentheses there about solar panels. I'm going to touch on this for just a minute. We can talk about it more in the Q&A later if you have questions about it. But if your seller tells you, when you ask them the question, I see you have solar panels, and they say, yeah, they're all excited and they're all hot to trot about it, and I only pay $150 a month. Well, that's great. Question is what is that? Is it a lease? Is it a power purchase agreement? Is it special financing that was done? You really got to get to the bottom of it. If you ask your sellers how much they paid for the solar and they can't tell you, then chances are they don't own them. And if they don't own them, they're of absolutely no use, except you have to get your hands on the lease and see what the lease says and or the power purchase agreement. Because even to this day, there are still issues with the assumption of leases, and there are still problems with transferring. So you need to know upfront what's going on so that your title rep and your broker manager are involved, and everybody is prepared to deal with whatever's coming down the pike on your deal when it gets into escrow. The other sheet, the next sheet that I would throw out there for you that I would recommend is have one single sheet of paper that talks about the HOA. How much are the dues? Are they monthly or yearly? What's the HOA phone number? What's the management company's name? What's the association's name? And I say that because what you're trying to do is not sell the appraiser, but you're trying to sell them. And if you can give them data to make their job easier, hey, it may help you in the long run. You're trying to build some credibility with them. The other thing that I would create on a separate sheet is multiple offers. If you have multiple offers, let's go through it. For instance, on a property, I just talked to an agent the other day. She had 72 showings and she had 14 offers in less than 3 days. And so she goes, well, I had multiple offers. And I said, great, what were they? And she kind of paused for a minute. She goes, well, you want them all? And I said, yeah, I want to know all of the offers that came in. I want to know what those prices are, because that information is what I take to put into my report to help me explain if I'm going to meet the contract price and it's over the list price. I want to explain what's going on. Now, some situations I would recommend providing a copy of page 1 of the offer, but I know that is proprietary information and confidential information, and you guys may not be comfortable with that. If that's the case, I have no problem with it, but at least be prepared to state the offers that came in. You got an offer at $400,000 that was FHA. You got a 410 that was conventional. You got 3 offers that were VAs between 420 and 429. You get the gist. The last item here, which should also have 4 asterisks on it. I don't know why it only has 3. That was my bad. Your market data with notes. Now, you're going to see the word not and the word comps. For those of you that have been in this session with me before, you probably already know where I'm going to go with this. For those of you that haven't been with me before, hang on. You're going to have a change in your vocabulary. You are going to present market data to the appraiser. Take the word comps and comparable sales out of your vocabulary. The only person that decides what is comparable is the real estate appraiser. They decide what goes into their report. They decide what's comparable, not you, not the lender, not the seller, not the buyer, not the title officer, nobody. It's the appraiser. What you are providing is market data. Hopefully the market data you are providing is reasonable data that makes sense, but you are providing market data. So if you take nothing else away from this, please take comps out of your vocabulary talking to an appraiser and use the word market data. You soften things up and it doesn't make you sound like you're trying to sell them with something. Yes, you are, but you're not hitting them over the head with a ball peen hammer. On your market data, if you've been into that property, I would make a comment, handwritten note. Don't write War and Peace, just a couple of quick notes on it. And don't embellish. Don't embellish what you saw at the property. Don't be afraid of bad data. Don't be afraid of good data, because it's all a factor. That's what the appraisers are looking for. They want to see something that's superior, hopefully something that's similar, and something that's worse, because that helps them understand how they're setting up the details in their grid. So don't be afraid to discuss it. In the data that you're presenting, put it in there. Hey, if you were in the sale data number 1 and number 3 and you saw something that was good or bad, make a note of it. And if you see the market going up or down or sideways, don't tell them, show them. And if you can't show them, then don't tell them. Now, offers, as we said before, make sure that they've got that sheet of paper that says, yeah, I got multiple offers on this. Lay it all out for them. How many offers did you get? What were the prices? We said that before. So what you want to do is you want to have a package of data ready for the appraiser when you go to meet them. And what you want to have on the very top piece of document is the subject improvements. What makes this property stand out? Granite counters, quartz counters, upgraded flooring, they redid the kitchen, they redid the baths, they've done new interior painting, whatever it is, big views. They got a swimming pool, whatever it is. You want those notes to be the very first page of the package that you're handing to the appraiser. And you tell them, hey, here's the subject information. Here's information about the subject and the improvements. The next document would be talk about the HOA if there is one. If there isn't, don't worry about it. The next document after that, I would make reference to the number of showings and the number of offers that you received. And if your property was on the market for 50 days, currently in this market, you want to make sure that the appraiser understands, hey, this thing's been in escrow 4 times. 2 of them kicked out because they lost their job. 1 kicked out because they got cold feet. Whatever the story is, make sure that they understand why that property was on the market for so long. Because even 55 days right now is long, which I know is weird, but it is. If you're getting any inputs from the pending agents on their properties, might want to make a note of that. And I would put that along with your market data sheets, which would be the last data in that package that you're going to present to the appraiser. You want to put all of that together. And you want that package to be handed to them, paper clipped, however you want to do it. Don't get all the details with them. Just say, look, I've got a packet of data here for you. I'd like to give this to you. If the appraiser is like some of the appraisers I have met and that you've probably dealt with, and they say, I can't take anything from you. You're trying to influence me. Well, guess what? Those appraisers are wrong, but you can't argue with them about it. What you want to do is you want to make a note on your folder that you try to present this package of data to the appraiser on such and such date at such and such a time. The reason you do that is 2 weeks from now is if something blows up and there's an issue, you want to be able to notify the lender that, hey, here's what I tried to present to the appraiser. Guess what? That package goes a long way. It's helpful information as long as your data is reasonable. If your data is crazy and off the chart, then you may be shooting yourself in the foot. Here's something about, I don't know how this got in here. I apologize for this. What we take a look for when we're looking for distances, also on house sizes, we look at 20% larger and smaller in home sizes. So in other words, if a house is 2,000 square feet, we may look at 1,600 up to 2,400 square feet. We try to stay with similar ages and amenities, pool and view. And here's something that's really critical in our area and probably in other areas in Orange County as well. School districts, if they are important, then make sure that the appraiser knows that, because you may be getting an appraiser coming from somewhere that may not be familiar with it. And you do not want him pulling sales out of a property on the other side of Jefferson Avenue or down in Temecula on the other side of Temecula Parkway if your property's in the Great Oak High School District. And if they're trying to pull something out north of Temecula Parkway, that might be a problem. So just be aware of if what things are important, make sure that the appraiser understands that and that you're not embellishing the story and that the market supports it. Now, here's the other thing. If your property is not in the best school district and you're pulling all your sales out of there, well, guess what? If the appraiser is familiar with that area, they're going to see what's going on and you're going to have a problem. So just be prepared for that. Lot sizes matter, but don't tell me it's a 13,000 square foot and I go out the back door and I get in the backyard and I find out that 80 to 90% of it's straight up a slope. Don't worry. It's not a real strong argument. So just be careful with things. And here's the last thing, folks. A lot of agents I talk to want to tell me how great the seller and the buyer are. They're a cute couple. They're a young couple. They're this, they're that. I don't really care. And I don't mean to be blunt about it, but just leave it out. Because it sounds like you're pushing the appraiser and you're selling them hard. They don't need to know that. They're not appraising them. They're appraising the house, not the seller, not the buyer. So leave it out of the conversation. Just like you're leaving the word comps out of your vocabulary, leave the description out of the seller and the buyer out of it too. We're running out of time here, so I'm going to kind of fly through this real quickly, but there's a rebuttal letter that Vicky's got a copy of that will be sent to you guys. It's very straightforward. It's pretty simple to follow. What I highly recommend on this is leave the appraiser out of it. I don't care if they dressed like a pig, if they showed up in flip-flops, or if they showed up wearing a cowboy hat with a big belt buckle and a pair of cowboy boots. I don't care how big of an idiot they were. Leave them out of it. This is about the subject. This is about the market. It's not about the appraiser. And if you start throwing explicatives after the appraiser, it's just not going to end well. So just leave it out. The other thing that I recommend is write your thoughts out first. You're going to be hot. You're going to be mad. You're going to be upset. Then write them all down first. Then go compose a second letter and take all of the hot stuff, leave that in the first letter, and then take the factual data that you need for the second letter. Weed it out. You don't need it. Leave your emotions, put your emotions to the side, calm down. I know it's a frustrating situation. You got the seller yelling at you, the buyer's agent's looking at you sideways, the buyer's scared, everybody's looking at you as a listing agent. I understand. But set it aside for a little bit, calm down before you write this rebuttal letter. Don't write a novel. And if you've got any specific information, like one of the charts I showed with time adjustments or a commentary on one of the sales that they either didn't put in or did put in, make a note on it. I've also put a little comment here. Be respectful and humble and kind, especially right now. Everybody's on the edge of their seat. You might be right, but you also might be wrong. And the last thing you want to do is try throwing that appraiser under the bus, and then 2 weeks later, the karma shows up and that appraiser's back on another one of your listings. So that's why I say leave them out of it. Strictly deal with the data and deal with the subject property. The other really key thing, after the appraiser has left the property or they've done whatever they've done, do not reach back to them. Once you find out there's an issue, everything goes through the lender. So you and the buyer's agent need to communicate appropriately, and you need to get that information to the lender. Leave the appraiser out of it. The lender will handle it in their own way. They've got their own structures and the ways to do it, and every lender is different, so don't get in the middle of that. I recommend a bullet format, which you'll see in the template. If you see something about a property that you know doesn't make sense, and I'm using kind of a crazy one like, oh, by the way, this property backs to a freeway, is there no location adjustment made for that? Now, intuitively, we would say, yeah, there probably should be, but right now there may not be because there's not many properties listed for sale. So all of a sudden the buyers are overlooking the fact that they're backing up to the 15 freeway and there's traffic going by them every night. You don't know. So you have to take a look at it. So just be careful with how you're handling that. The last thing I want to say about rebuttals is do not pressure for a higher value. If your data does not lead the lender there, chances are you probably shouldn't be writing the rebuttal. And I know that's tough to think about and hard to swallow, but if your data is not pointing in the right direction, then there's a hiccup. All right, so we got through this all in fine fashion, and we still got some time left over, I believe.
Awesome.
About 10 minutes left over. So I'm going to let Vicky take over and kind of control this, and let me get out of this and look at people's faces.
Awesome. Some takeaways I got out of it. And every time you come, it seems like we have a different market and a different set of rules and a different way and different strategies we have to employ. But what I got from you today was multiple offer craziness we've got right now. Send copies of the front page of the multiple offers. Provide that to the appraiser. Meet the appraiser. Don't embellish. Give a list of the subject improvements. And I also include, if the seller's given me what they paid for it, I include what they paid for it, the number amount.
Absolutely.
Explain why the market's so long if you've got one that's been on the market 30 days or more. Be professional and work with the appraiser. And lastly, bring homemade cookies to the appraiser.
Or find out if the appraiser's diabetic before you do that.
Yes, well, make them gluten-free and sugar-free and what have you, okay? So you can't go wrong. There's a lot of good questions. I'm going to get to them. Yeah, Tom.
They can also do that with their managers.
Yeah, that's trainers, tormentors, whatever. I have one quick question that I'm going to get to. We've got some great questions here. Single story versus two-story. I've had issues with that, same square feet. One was two-story, one was single story within a couple blocks of each other, and they went a mile away to find a single story. So what's the deal on that?
In most situations, if you have a two-story property and you got data that's one-story property, most appraisers, if they're seasoned, they're going to take a look at that and go, wait a minute, because typically one stories, not always, but typically one stories will carry some sort of a slight premium. It's up to the appraiser to take a look at the data. It's very easy to do. They can do it in MLS within less than 5 minutes to find out what the difference is in average sales price between a one-story and a two-story. With the limited amount of data that we have right now, almost anything is fair game. So if you've got a one-story home and they're trying to compare it with a two-story home, I wouldn't get into panic mode over that unless they're hanging all their weight on the two-story house. And then I'm going to be going, well, wait a minute, hold the phone here. I'm not sure that's appropriate. And there is where the agents can do some work, because you can go into the neighborhood very quickly and you can do your MLS data search and you can pull up one-story homes and find out what the average sales price is. It takes the click of a button. And then you can go right back into your criteria and go click on two-story with your same criteria, square footages in the same market area, and click on two-story and find out what the average sales price is. And if there's a difference, and let's say that the single story average sales price is $450,000 and the average two-story is $440,000, that's a $10,000 difference. What's that percentage? Very quick. Just make the calculation and say, hey, look, there's a potential for an adjustment here. That becomes part of your rebuttal if that's what the appraiser has done. So there's ways of working around that and ways that you as the agent can help your clients get to that end point where you want to be. And quite frankly, right now, it should be both a buyer's agent and a seller's agent situation taking a look at that, because the buyer's agent's having as much fist fight trying to get offers accepted. So it should be a joint effort. And everybody should be taking a look at this and give a homework assignment to everybody that needs to go take a look at this. And I know that sounds weird, but right now it's kind of all hands on deck because this is a mess.
Yeah, we're all in it together right now.
Pretty much.
All right, so Janie asks, when you have recent improvements, such as a kitchen remodel in 12 months, and then do you give more value or adjustments to that versus if the same upgrades were made in the last 5 to 7 years? So.
No, I don't know appraisers that get to that finite level. The bottom line is how does it look in comparison with the sales that we're looking at? If we've got a property that's got quartz, if our subject property's got quartz or granite countertops, and two of the sales that are on the subject street or in the neighborhood have got ceramic tile and they got vinyl flooring. And we've got, I mean, I look at it on the totality of the interior work. The bigger issue for knowing when it was done was to help the lenders and the appraiser fill out the paperwork that they need to do. But it's also a benefit because they can say, hey, look, this property had 1, 2, 3, 4 upgrades. The other properties didn't have the same level of upgrades. So I went to the upper end of my adjusted value range because subject properties got more than everybody else. So that's kind of the mentality for it. So I don't really get into that level of being finite on whether it was done last year or 5 years before. I realize things change quickly in 5 years, but for the most part, if they don't have the 4-inch ceramic tile, white ceramic tile counter squares that were, you know, from 1980s and 90s and early 2000s, if they don't have that, then the kitchen's been updated. It's been updated. You know, same thing with the bathrooms. I mean, if you're still looking at fiberglass shower enclosures and a couple other houses in the neighborhood have all got, you know, tile wainscoting or marble wainscoting or travertine, okay, well, they've updated. Now, all of a sudden, that's important, and you need to take a look at that, and it becomes a reflection of the market you're in as far as the price ranges you're in, as to the type of impact those conditions have. And that's going to be subject and data dependent in order to make that kind of a decision.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned earlier on the reference to buyback. What is that?
Oh, buybacks. Here's the trauma, and this is what's got the lenders terrified. If they do a loan and they close today, and the borrower loses their job in October, and they have not passed their seasoning with whoever they sold it to, the lender is going to go look at that loan package. They're going to look at the appraisal. They're going to look at the loan package. They're going to go over it with a fine-tooth comb. Because if they find errors in that loan package and that borrower went belly up and had lost his job and is not making their payments, and they stopped making their payments 2 months after they moved in, that lender has the potential of a buyback. And that penalty can be significant, where they have to take the entire loan back plus pay a penalty. And it can get expensive. And I know of some situations, I know I'm familiar with one situation because I was involved with a litigation deal in Orange County, where a mortgage broker almost went completely belly up because he had a very large loan that literally went bad, and it hadn't seasoned long enough, and the lender went back after him, and he almost went bankrupt over it. So the lenders right now are in a critical mass mode, and that's why they are beating on appraisers, and that's why, like I made the comment earlier in this presentation about a second appraisal being required on something that wasn't a jumbo loan. And it was being done because it was so much, but it was 10% or it was 11% over the asking price. You know, there's a lot of that going on. The lenders is terrified right now, and they want a second appraiser's opinion because they want more people's fingerprints on the murder weapon, is essentially what they want. And if there's something wrong, they want to be able to pin the blame on somebody else. Now, I mean, it's just a matter of the least resistance, and the appraiser is at the bottom end of the barrel. You guys don't have that fiduciary responsibility, but I do, and so do the lenders. So they're going to look to us for the responsibility.
Okay, well, thank you. Great question, Christine. From Peter, he said, you referenced earlier about not jumping over freeways or major streets. He said, what about jumping MLS areas?
Jumping MLS areas. Is Peter still on, or Pete, you still here?
You want to unmute and clarify that?
Yeah, can you clarify what you mean? Pete, are you here? Okay. Pete may not be here.
Comes on, we'll go back to his question.
Okay, well, here's this real quick. Let me answer the question of this. Okay. MLS areas, you got to be really careful because we still have area 202 and 205 and 220, but I don't use them anymore. Because what I found is we've got so many agents coming in from out of areas, they don't have any idea where an area is anymore. So they're doing mostly map searches now. So I would, you know, you can do what you want to do, but it's more of a map search type situation, and you know where your market boundaries are at. I mean, don't be in a situation. Let me give you an example for those of you that are local. I'm going to give you a real world example. I had a real estate agent that did not like what I did. And she sent me some sales. Now, if you're familiar with Clinton Keith Road and the Vineyard Knolls track, well, guess where the sales were that she wanted me to use for her property in order for that magical number to come in. She gave me sales out of Bear Creek on the other side and used those sales over there because they were detached condos. So yeah, you can jump out of your MLS area, but don't jump into, don't be doing something that's stupid. You just got to make sense, and it's got to be reasonable. And if there's a reason to go out of your market, you better be able to explain it, and it better make sense to the appraiser, and the appraiser better find the same thing. Because if the appraiser doesn't find the same thing, then all of a sudden, it may not end well.
All right, carnage in the streets. From Brandy, she wants to know, in the market data, do you recommend including pending homes or only recently sold?
I would recommend, especially right now. Now, let me qualify this. On the VA, they can only use closed sales, but the VA appraisers are responsible for looking at actives and pendings. So me personally, I would suggest if you've got a couple of pendings that make sense and you've interviewed the agents, I'd put them in that market data package that you provide to the appraiser, because it's showing what's going on. And right now, we don't have a lot. So you got to show what you got to show.
All righty. Do paid off solar systems increase value over leased ones?
Well, first off, a lease is a negative. Because if you don't know what, and this is one of the reasons why I made the comment about the solar earlier. On solar, if it's a lease, you have got to get that lease document. And if the seller doesn't have it, get with their company they're doing the lease with and demand a copy of it. And if you get it and you're not sure you understand it, get with your broker, get with your team leader. If you have to, call your corporate attorney. Make sure you understand what's going on. And let me give you an example of why I say this. I just reviewed a lease document the end of last year. It was ground mount. And it was on custom home. It was in Los Ranchitos. The property owner put in 64 panels. Nobody realized what the payback was in order to get out of the lease. It was $164,000. Now, granted, property was in the 1.5, 1.6 lane, but guess what? That's 10% of your sales price. So leases can be extremely a big problem. They can be negative as far as I'm concerned. PPAs, power purchase agreements, maybe not so much, but you got to understand what's going on with it. Now, as far as will solar increase the values, it depends. Favorite word of an appraiser. When were the panels put in? My panels were put in 2010. They're now 10 years old. Are they as efficient today as they were 10 years ago? The answer to that question is a zero. No, they are not. So unless your panels are brand new, there's a deficiency with them. I take a look at things from the income stream. Fannie Mae is just put out an edict, and I have not read it yet. I'm going to be full disclosure. Once I read this, I'll send an email to you, Vicki, and then you can transmit it out to the team, out to everybody that's on the call. And I'll take a look at this and I'll tell you what's going on, because Fannie Mae just came out and they're making life a little more interesting for the appraiser valuing solar. Because there's been a couple different ways of doing it. Either looking at it from an income stream, how much were they saving on a cost basis on a 5-year basis, which is how I like to take a look at it. And there's other guys that were looking at it from a cost standpoint and taking a look at the cost to replace, and then the output, the wattage of the unit and that kind of thing. And Fannie's looking at some things now, and I think they're throwing a monkey wrench into some of that. And I don't know the complete answer to that, but I will know within the next couple, 2 or 3 days when I get a chance to review that document that came out from Fannie about 2 weeks ago. But so solars are one of those benefits. You just may not be able to put a price tag on it because the appraiser may not be able to put a price tag on it. And let me throw another monkey wrench into this. If you want an idiot wearing a cowboy hat to help you with the valuation of valuing a property with solar panels, what I would recommend is start beating all of your brethren over the head and shoulders for not putting in the green fields, the number of panels, were they leased, what's the output? Because if you put that in there, all of a sudden I can start pulling data and I can start doing what we call in the appraisal world, paired sales analysis. And I can say, hey, this sale in these two sales over in this neighborhood, one had solar and one didn't. And there was a $15,000 difference in price. That worked out to be a 3% differential in pricing. Well, guess what? Now I got something to hang my hat on. But if you took a look the way I look at MLS and the lack of data about solar panels, you would be shocked. There's no information in there. And when I call you agents on the phone, you don't remember because that was 5 properties or 20 properties ago. You have no idea. Now all of a sudden I don't have the data to deal with. So we as appraisers need y'all's help in order to put data in there about solar in order for us to do the job that you all would like us to do when it comes to solar. Last thing about solar, get with your title rep and verify. As soon as you get to that property, you find out there's solar panels or the seller tells you that, get with your title rep and have them look at the prelim and see if there's a UCC filing on that. If there is, that UCC filing's got to be dealt with. And the lender who's going to be doing the loans got to be aware of that, because the last thing you want is for that to fall through the cracks and you get 3 days before close of escrow and all of a sudden they go, oh my God, we got a UCC filing, we didn't see it. So get started on the front end, not the back end. It's a lot less painful.
Thanks. On another note too, the lease, if they're leased, the buyer has to qualify independently for that lease amount as well if they pursue it. So that factors into whether or not they qualify for a loan.
Absolutely. Here's the other monkey wrench with that. Some lenders won't let you assume that lease.
Right.
And the kicker is going to be, on the assumption of that lease, the kicker is going to be how they stagger it. So that way the mortgage is in first position and the lease is in second position. But if that lease company tries to go back and put a UCC filing on it again, they go back into first position, and that's where the fist fight comes in.
Right. Yep. Peter said, we have a few more. Peter said, how should we handle the knowledge that an appraiser is out of area?
Oh, brother.
Shoot him?
Yeah. Me personally, you got my permission. Draw a gun. I got to be careful. Yeah, I've already got my picture in the FBI's most wanted list anyway. When you got an outer area appraiser, it means you have to step your game up. And if they're coming from, when you interview them, when they call you on the phone and they start asking you questions, answer all their questions. And before they hang up, you say, hey, give me an idea. Where are you coming from? Because I want to be prepared for you as far as market data and make sure I've got other information available for you in case you need it. And just see what's going on with them and see what they say, and maybe Google their name and see where their email or their website shows them at. Although not a lot of appraisers have websites, but some do. Idiots with cowboy hats do, but some don't. See if you can find out where they're from. Do a little homework, because if they're from out of the area, you got to do more work, unfortunately, because you got to be prepared. You got to make sure that they know what they're doing, and you got to make sure they know what they're doing, because they could go do something bad that the underwriter is going to pick up on because they've seen 30 other appraisals come through. And then you got another screwed up mess.
All right, well, thank you for that question from Harold. I have one from Harold, sorry. Do you still use 6 months of data knowing March, April, and May were wonky? With so many multiple offers today, how much does this affect your opinion and the value of a home?
Great question. Here's the way I look at the wonkiness of what is going on, not only back in March, April, and May, but the wonkiness with what's going on today. The first thing I take a look at is the inventory. How many properties are currently actively listed in that market area where the subject property is at? And I've seen some neighborhoods where there's been 1, 2, 3 active listings. Where's their pricing at? I take a look at that, because that gives me, especially if I see something that's just come on the market 2 days before and it's listed and the pricing is higher than where we're at, it's an indicator. I want to know what the pendings are doing. Now, all of a sudden, you got 2 active listings, you got 15 pendings. As an appraiser, I need to take a look at those pendings. And if I can't get a sense of what's going on, I will call those agents and I will find out what's going on with the pendings. Not all of them, but I need to get a sense of what's cooking, because that becomes part of my report. Because to me, the most important thing is what's currently going on today, not what happened 5 months ago. I can't ignore 5 or 6 months ago, but I have to deal with what today is, but I've got to make reasonable sense out of what's going on today. And in top of that, I also have to take a look at the number of offers you got on your property, the number of showings you got. Has it been in and out of escrow? And if it has, why? And I've had one particular agent that, for a lack of a better word, fibbed. And I found out it wasn't good. Be honest, tell them what's going on. And because appraisers are out there, and if you fib to an appraiser, you don't know what they know. They may not know anything. You may have one over on them, but just be honest about what's going on. Hey, look, fell out a couple times. That happens. That's why it's been on the market for 55 days and everything else is closing, going under escrow in 3 days. So don't be afraid of the data.
All righty.
If that,
That's,
by the way, if that didn't answer the question, if Harold's still on, he can ask, or any of these people that got questions, when they look at this thing again, they can call me on the phone. We can talk about it.
awesome. So Christine says property is a very upscale development surrounded by more ordinary developments. It's a 4+ bedroom that's sold for 1.3 mil and just a few 3 bedroom. Okay. The last 3 bedrooms sold for $930, listed at $940. Where can we find market data?
Christine, is this yours? I think I see you're here. Is this you, Christine?
Yes, it is. And the one which is selling now at 930, which has a market data property in 930 a year ago, there's nothing that had sold in that area as a 1-bedroom for a year.
Okay. Let me ask you a couple questions. Where is this at? Where is this property located at?
It's in Cyprus.
Up in Cyprus. Okay. I'll full disclosure, I don't know about Cyprus, but let's look at it from this standpoint. If you have a community that is very well defined and has a specific air to it, if you will, it's a premium neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody knows it's a premium neighborhood. If you have that, I would not be afraid to go back in time and take a look and see what your time adjustments and what your pricing changes have been over the course of time. And the other thing is, in the Cyprus area, is there any other communities that are similar to the one where your subject property is at?
I don't know. Maybe I should look at that also.
I would take a look, because even if you've got to go beyond the half mile or 1 mile area, I would take a look at that, Christine, because you may find some valuable data out, because I'm having a hard time believing that a 3-bedroom versus a 4-bedroom is a $200,000 difference. I've never seen a 3 or 4 bedroom make.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking what you might, number one, I'd talk to the agent if you haven't on that 930,000.
And she doesn't know because she's from Pico Rivera. That's the first time she went to Cyprus.
Oh, brother. Okay. Then what I would do is I would start looking around for some other communities that are similar to yours,
Okay.
similar school districts,
Mm-hmm.
still within that Cyprus area, and see what you can find that way. Because I'm going to guess that you probably have 1 or 2 other communities that are probably reasonable. And even if it's nicer than yours,
Mm-hmm.
that's okay, because that becomes now your upper end where your property isn't. And then the other $930,000 property is maybe what your property isn't. So now you've got both ends of the spectrum. So go back in time in your immediate neighborhood and see what you've got, and then take a look at some other areas
Okay.
there of premium properties and see what you got.
Okay. Appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome, ma'am.
Thanks, Christine. Okay, this is always a good question from Giovanni, and it comes up frequently. What value does a pool hold over?
Well, Giovanni, I see you on here still. I think you're still on here. I hate to do this to you, but it depends. Here's why I say it depends. if you're in Vail Ranch, which is a $350,000, $400,000 neighborhood, that pool is not going to be worth the same as the property on Rancho Mirada that's overlooking the golf course that's in the gated area that's $700,000 or $800,000. So what I suggest is that if you have a property that's got a swimming pool, and by the way, right now, pools seem to be a hot item for whatever the reason. And I haven't figured that out because Tom's shaking his head. Yes, Tom, you and I remember back in the 90s, and Vicki, you remember in the 90s, when pools were a negative. Literally, I saw properties in areas where literally people were paying less for a pool house than they were with a pool because they didn't want the maintenance, they didn't want the electric bill, they didn't want anything. So it kind of depends upon the time. Right now, they're a hot ticket. So it's going to be push you more towards the upper end of the value. But on average, track homes normally are between $15,000 to $20,000, $25,000. But I've seen neighborhoods, track houses, I've seen neighborhoods were $40,000 or $50,000. But the fastest way to figure that out, it's very simple. Do a search in this community where you're selling your house at, and do it without pools. And then do it with a swimming pool. And go click on all of the banners on those pool section. Heated, tile, propane, covers, because you don't know where your out of area agent may have boxed, they may have checked. So you want to make sure you get it all. So check all the boxes for a pool, except for above ground, because above ground pools are useless because they're personal property. Vinyl pools, don't worry about those. But anything else, gunite, all the rest of them, and see what the average differentials are. And pretty soon, you in your neighborhood, all of a sudden, you'll see 10, 15 properties that have sold. And don't just do 6 months, do a year or 2 years. See what the trends are. It'll only take you less than 5 minutes to do this because MLS it's your friend. You guys use it every day. You know how to use it. So it's a way for you to kind of get a trigger on where those pools are lying at. But your general range, like I said, 15, 10, 15, up to 20, 25. But like I said, you can't go with that on everything because you might be in an expensive neighborhood like Christine's at, and all of a sudden that pool might be a whole bunch more money.
Does that hold true for golf course views?
Ooh. Oh my God. Golf courses have become a freaking nightmare. Can I use the word freaking on video? Golf courses are an absolute
rule on that one.
Yeah, they're a nightmare. Not views themselves, just golf course views. Because I have proof that depending upon where you're at in the fairway, your house may be less. Because if you're along a fairway and you got a tee box back down to the left of you and everybody's teeing across by you, most people are right-handed golfers. They have sliced to the right, which means they're driving their ball into your living room. And let me tell you, I've seen houses that sold for less. Or they had major upgrades because they had, believe it or not, one house had bulletproof glass.
Oh, God.
And can you imagine what they spent on that? So views are relative. What I would do is when you have a property that's got a view home, it's take a look. You're going to know. What I would do is just pull up that street on your area map, ID it with your map, and then those sales that are on the view side, uncheck all the boxes that aren't on the view side and find out what that average sales price is along all that. Go back, a year in time or 2 years if you have to. And then go check all the boxes that don't have the view and uncheck the ones on that street with the view and see what the differential is. It's not an always and forever, but it'll give you a rough idea. And some of the views may be 1%, 2%, 3%. Some of the views are so doggone panoramic that they're pretty gigantic. I've seen some neighborhoods where there's a $250,000 view adjustment I've made.
Wow. Well, I say for the golf course views, pick up the balls in the backyard and repair and replace the windows before the appraiser gets there.
Yes, that would be a good idea. Also, continue to pick up the golf balls and save those, sell them to the golfers coming by to help pay for the windows that have already been broken.
And the mortgage. Okay, I think we got through all the questions. Are there any more? I do have hot off the press for you, Brad.
Sure.
Fannie and Freddie, with a lot of grief from the National Association of Realtors and the California Association of Realtors and the mortgage banking industry, has delayed that 0.05 adverse fee.
They've just reversed it today?
I have an email. I'll send it to you. So,
Okay, ladies and gentlemen that are still on this call, this is why I say make your lender your best friend, because it continues to change every day.
right. So anyway, we did lobby for it, and we're right. It's delayed. It's not been taken off the table yet, so we still have to fight for it.
No, in Calabria, it could be delayed till Monday.
Yeah, it's true. All right, any other questions? This is great information. I've got the rebuttal sheet that I can send to anyone who wants it. I'll probably put it just out in the email or on the Buzz, on CB Buzz, our private Facebook page. And otherwise, if there's no other questions, Brad, thank you. I know you came from where you live in Temecula. I know now you have to go up to wherever it was in Orange County. So I appreciate you always being here for us. And he is always very accessible. I've used, I call him with my problems too. So,
and that's the one thing I'd like to leave everybody with, and hopefully they'll watch through the entire recording on this. And Vicky, you can send out a note to everybody that's left that had to get off the call to go sell houses, or to take a buyer to 22 more houses, to put in 22 more offers. I'm available. My cell phone number was in the chat room. It's on the PowerPoint presentation. They'll see it on the recording. I get calls probably 2-3 times a week from agents going, okay, now what do I do? And I'm more than happy to spend 10 or 15 minutes of my time with you, get you pointed in the right direction, give you some things to think about. I've had some success with helping people on rebuttals. I had a lady about, I'm going to guess about a month and a half ago. They called me on the phone with a rebuttal about a Lake Elsinore, and we talked about it. I gave her some information. She was able to do some digging, and she was successful in getting the appraiser to make a revision.
and you know what else I want to say, and then I'm gonna get a bit over to Tom, because Brad was giving you a little bit of crap before and you weren't listening earlier on when you were on, Tom, when we first started. But the one thing that you did for me too, and this is for all of you, when you've got a very unique property, and there are times you can't comp it. There is really nothing out there until you've seen and you dug up permits, which was really appropriate and needed for this particular property. So I had Brad do this about a couple of months ago for a property that I'll be listing. There was nowhere for me to go. I needed his expertise. So I put him in touch with the seller, and he did a fee appraisal with the seller. So now we have an opinion of value where it was all over the place before. So if you do have those kinds of challenges, please also reach out to Brad on that.
Well, I appreciate that. It's very kind.
And then Brad, you were given some, giving it to Tom there when we first got on. So you got a rebuttal, Tom?